Red Cloud Financial Services is your preeminent source for mining industry opportunities. The team provides a unique, tailored marketing program dedicated to reaching the right people from its mining-focused global network, giving clients access to industry-leading events and conferences, retail and institutional marketing, plus an in-house growth-driven digital agency. Red Cloud Financial Services has access to some of the mining industry's most notable companies and CEOs.
From manufacturing to fertilizers and sunscreens, zinc is a $40 billion annual market and the fourth most used metal worldwide. We're excited to bring you a full agenda of mining companies contributing to making this abundant resource available to meet future demands for generations to come, including a keynote speech from Dr. Andrew Green from the International Zinc Association. Hello there, and welcome to Red Cloud Financial Services Live Zinc Showcase. Thank you for subscribing and tuning in for our live broadcast through Twitter and YouTube. Happy to have you. I'm Timothy Lee, research analyst at Red Cloud Securities, your host today. If you have any questions throughout the event today, please tweet or leave a comment. The submission will be closed at 12:45 ahead of our panel discussion. Stay tuned, there's much more to come. First up in this live event, I'm joined by Mike Struthers, CEO of Altaley Mining. Altaley is a Canadian-based mining company operating in Mexico. It engages in exploration, development, and operation of polymetallic mineral resource projects, and specifically its Campo Morado mine is a fully operating asset that gives the company exposure to the base metal market. Welcome, Mike.
Hi, Tim. Good to be here.
Mike, to kick off the questions here, Altaley has faced a number of challenges in the past year or so. How do you see your role going forwards, and what are the biggest challenges?
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Look, I think anybody who follows the company would know that company performance over recent times has been poor. In particular, we've had a poor record or reputation for delivery. So, I guess my main challenge and my message to everybody now is that changes now. I think the challenge, fundamentally, one of the challenges that the company had in the past was really it was an exploration company, but with an operating mine and a fairly complex construction project. So, relatively advanced assets, but the organization had not really evolved in pace with that. So that's what we're doing now. The future really is on delivery, as I say, and myself and the board, completely determined to transform Altaley into a successful professional mining company, and that really means do what you say you're going to do. So the immediate goals for us this year and going into next year, stabilize and improve production at both the sites. We have two operations. We'll come to that shortly. Deliver and stabilize production at our new construction project called Talweto. Deliver that initial target of 500 tons a day. Then expand that to 1,000 tons a day, and improve the consistency and the performance at our core asset, the Campo Morado mine, as you mentioned in the introduction. So sharp focus on developing a really robust set of plans for 2023 and delivering on that and getting back a reputation for delivery. So that's really my goal now for the next year.
Great. And following up on that, obviously at the end of August, Altaley reported Q2 results, and the company faced some challenges at the operations, as we've said. Can you walk us through some of the specifics and what the outlook is for the remainder of the year on a high level?
Yeah, so the Campo Morado mine earlier in the year was doing reasonably well, but then late in Q1, the principal production area, it's a region of the mine called El Lago, it was recognized by the team on site that that was challenging. It was perhaps the source or the reason for a number of the challenges they were facing. It's very complex ore, high iron contents. Its throughput through the mill is challenged. So the mine put in place some plans to then move away from that area, recognizing the challenges that it presented. And in concert with that, then commissioned a copper circuit, which in some of the new areas where the mine was going to be then producing from contained copper, which was, it was possible to produce saleable concentrates. So it took a couple of months to get that circuit stabilized. It's performing quite well now, and generally the mine is doing a lot better now. So that diversification away from that problem area has made a big difference, although there was a bit of a bump in sort of early in Q2 while that was being stabilized. Tauweto, it is producing already, but at low levels, mainly for sort of testing of existing processes and equipment as the construction project continues. It's still underway. So when we talk about production from Tauweto, it's piecemeal or at low levels because we're still constructing the project. Most facilities are commissioned and we are gradually ramping up. The definitive crushing circuit, we expect that to be done by early November. And then we'll be close to getting the 500 ton a day, probably commissioned through the year end. One qualification that I'll say about the TSF, we're waiting for the final schedules on that. So that might drift into early Q1, but it's in that sort of time frame. We're not talking about 6 months away. It's been a very challenging period with unusually heavy rains this year. So that's created some delays in the TSF. As I said, sharp focus on 2023 plans. We've also commissioned an independent review of the metallurgical processes at Campo Morado. That's underway right now. And hopefully that'll give us some more opportunities for increasing throughputs or concentrate qualities in the coming months and through next year. So it's all about really robust plans for next year. And I think, both mines are going to perform very well.
Great. Now, looking a little further forward with Tauweto, could you give us an update on the ramp up to 1,000 tons per day?
Yeah, sure. So I was saying that the first goal here is to deliver on the 500 ton project. That's the most important thing right now, and that's our sort of core focus for Tauweto. So the sensible approach here is to get that commissioned first, stabilize it as a sort of reliable foundation from which to expand, and then we'll develop the 1,000 ton project. So I've split them down into, rather than being a sort of continuous stream, I've split them into 2 projects. When we bed down the 500 ton project, then we'll do the 1,000 ton project. The indications at the moment is that the 1,000 ton will be sort of late Q2 next year, around mid-year perhaps. But that timing is still to be confirmed because I've got the teams on site now going through proper sort of project definition processes to really have detailed construction schedules and estimates that give us confidence in any dates that we share with the market. So those are broad indications at the moment, and we'll be able to confirm those more precisely at a later date.
Great. And once both operations are up and running and optimized, do you plan to utilize some cash flow for exploration?
Yes, for sure. That's going to be the plan in 2023 for both sites. Campo Morado has got multiple sort of mineralized bodies at various stages of resource development. So the program will initially be to develop and upgrade resources in the known bodies, and that'll include critically met test work, because it's the precious metals are refractory, and so there's a lot of work to do there, and hopefully we'll continue to incrementally improve concentrate grades and recoveries. There's a variety of other exploration targets at Campo Morado, but those are going to be tested at a later date. We're going to work outwards from the known resources. For Tauweto, there are multiple veins and they extend for considerable distances across the mountains, so in both directions. So I would say in the second half of next year, I hope we can start to expand the resource base by exploring further along strike. But we've got a lot of in-mine sort of resource expansion work to do as well, by gradually just rolling out drill programs to improve, increase the category of resources and transfer or transpose those into reserves. So yeah, I'd hope to do exploration in the second half of next year at both sites.
Great. Well, I think that's all the time we have for right now. Thank you very much, Mike. Next up, we'll have John Antwi, CEO, and Anthony Bottrell, consulting geologist from Bendito Resources. Welcome, gentlemen. Bendito Resources is a private mineral resource company headquartered in Reno, Nevada. The company fully owns a portfolio of diversified mineral projects in Mexico, which includes the zinc, lead, silver Opusura project and Palo Seco's silver zinc deposits. Welcome, gentlemen. Look forward to connecting with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So you have acquired a portfolio of exploration projects in Mexico. Are they all wholly owned, and are there any royalties?
Yes, Tim. Thanks for having us. We really appreciate this and the great opportunity to share these important projects with you. So yes, all these projects are 100% owned by Bendito Resources, and they're for the two flagship projects, that is Alacran and Opusura, there are royalties on them.
Great. What is your most advanced project, and what would be next in the list of priority targets?
Anthony?
Yeah, I'd say we have two well advanced projects. We have the Alacran epithermal lithocap project, and then at Opusura we have the zinc, lead, silver skarn deposits. So they're both well advanced projects. The next priority targets coming after those are at Alacran we actually have porphyry copper targets, which cover a lot of the rest of the project. And then at both of those, Alacran and Opusura, we have lead, zinc, silver veining targets as well to follow up on.
Great. And following up on that, could you provide a further breakdown of the $1.2 million in exploration spending planned? How will that be allocated among the projects?
Yeah, Tim, so what we intend to do in the short term, there's some work we intend to do at Alacran. So with that, it will be like 70% for Alacran and 30% for Opusura.
Okay, great. And when might we look forward to assay results from the current drill programs?
Yeah, so we're drilling this quarter. We start drilling this quarter, and so with the typical sort of assay turnarounds, we're expecting late in Q1 to be releasing results on those assays.
Okay, great. And then looking forward, obviously, depending on receipt of assay results, but when would you expect a resource estimate for Alacran?
Yeah, so for Alacran, there's a few things going on. One, we're actually working on internal resource updates currently on the historical work that had been done. So in line with that drilling, we expect that in Q2 we'd be able to report new resources for those. Probably the other thing that's going on with that is we're currently updating or creating maiden 43101 technical reports for those projects as well. That we'll be looking to release very soon.
Okay, great. And then looking at regional exploration, you've highlighted some regional targets at Alacran. When would you plan to start focusing on some of those as well?
Yeah, we're doing a lot of work in the background on those projects. We were very fortunate with Azure and also Tech. We got a wealth of information in terms of geophysics and mineralogy and geochemistry and so forth. And so we're actually, in conjunction with our main projects, we're actually advancing those in the background. And as part of that, we're also looking at potential strategic alignments and so forth to be able to advance them.
Great. Yeah, and I guess following up on that, given your fairly large portfolio, would you potentially look at M&A opportunities or joint venture opportunities on some of the projects to help fund the development of Alacran and Opusura?
Tim, you see me smiling. You can bet on that. Well, definitely, it's a portfolio of 8 projects, and we want to be very strategic as to what we do here. So there's opportunities for partnerships. In fact, we are currently actively working on a number of them. And so we will be definitely coming out and explaining to the market why we are doing what with each of these projects. but you will definitely hear what we do with respect to each of these ones, in partnerships, if I should say.
Great.
Mhm.
And obviously you had acquired this portfolio of assets in Mexico from Azure Minerals. The assets look quite prospective. Some of them are fairly advanced. How much did you pay for them? And why did Azure choose to get rid of them?
All right, so it was a 20 million price tag for the 20 million Australian price tag for these assets. And it was a great deal for us, honestly. And Azure was happy to do this because they saw in our team the ability to take those assets and take them to a higher level in terms of advancing them and then also building a different investor base. And so that was their real objective. They were going to be focused in Australia and wanted to partner with a group like ours. And so they have equity and will continue to retain equity in Bendito Resources. But that is the strategy for them to move on and get us to do the work and provide the support. So we're very happy to do this. Yeah.
Great. And now with this acquisition behind you, what are your plans for going public?
So you may have noticed that we put out a press release, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, on the letter of intent with a shell to take the company public in the short term. Now, our estimation is that we'll do that in Q1 of 2023. So we are sort of putting all the information together. Anthony mentioned the 43101 report that is intended for this month. And then we're putting all the other documents together for the filing. So very excited to let the market know that we're coming live very soon, and it's most likely in the first part of 2023.
Great. And what can you tell us about the team behind Bendito? Where did you work prior to this?
So my background, I started as a geologist at AngloGold Ashanti. 13 years, joined Newmont for 11 years, and Klondex. And so for most of the people in the team, actually we met at Klondex. There are certain people that I knew prior to that, but Anthony and I met at Klondex. There are others that I knew from Newmont, but essentially we are a core of geos and engineers that believe strategically that there is an opportunity between when something is identified as a resource and when it's available for production. So we share that vision, and so that's what we essentially look out for, and transition quite a number of projects, adding a lot of value until they are battle ready or production ready, and then we are good to take it into production if we should, because we do have people that have done a lot of production work as well, but that's the core of the team.
Great, great. And obviously we had talked a bit about your flagship projects. What are your non-core assets? Is there any work planned there?
Yes, so one of the things, if you see on some of our presentations, we have highlights on certain things we want to do. And one of those is to do another review of those non-core assets. So there are 6 of them. Some of them we have already been approached for partnerships and we are considering at this stage. And then others, we would want to do a little work to better understand what the potential is for these projects. So it is part of our near-term assessment, and our geos have been tasked, besides all the work they're doing, to come back to management and recommend a few next steps for these projects. And so I should say you should stand by for that information.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Well, thank you very much, John and Anthony, for your insights and for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
We're now joined by Sherman Dahl, President and Director of SKRR. This company focuses its efforts on the underexplored Trans-Hudson Corridor in Saskatchewan, Canada. Earlier this year, the company closed the acquisition of 100% of the Watts Lake zinc claim, which consists of 24 mineral claims, nearly 14,000 hectares, with rare high-grade intercepts. Sherman, pleasure to have you.
Well, thanks so much for having us here, SKRR, based out of Vancouver, but with our majority of our portfolio, which is in Saskatchewan, Trans-Hudson Corridor. Happy to be joining.
Great.
And talking about zinc.
Absolutely. And within your portfolio of projects, you have obviously Watts Lake, which has significant VMS targets. What is the potential that you see there?
Well, Watts Lake was originally staked and explored by Ross McElroy, and the SKRR, of course, is SK for Saskatchewan. One of the R's is Ross McElroy, and the other one is Ron Nedolinsky. So it was really the bringing together the geological brilliance of Ross McElroy, who's an award-winning discovery geologist, very well known in the uranium sector, but also in gold and zinc in Saskatchewan. And then, of course, Ross McElroy, who's discovered 4 gold mines, which I think is 4 more than most of them. So it really was Ross and Ron that did the initial work of bringing Watts Lake to SKRR. And so SKRR, as you highlighted, is a significant zinc VMS target with already a resource. Now the resource is not 43101, but we're pretty excited about the whole Watts Lake package. I think I forgot your original question. Maybe just re-say the question.
What is the potential that you see overall on the
right.
project?
Okay, sorry. Yeah, so the potential overall, I mean, it's a very large package. It's got a strike zone of over 4.5 kilometers, with clearly some highlights from the 2019 drilling on the main zone, intersected like 13.5 meters of 7.8% zinc lead, 13.2 grams per ton of silver, and including 27 meters of 4.84% zinc. So, this has the real potential to host a major near surface, large, high grade zinc, lead, silver VMS, which is well known to exist in the Saskatchewan Trans-Hudson Corridor, which of course is home to the massive Flin Flon ore body, which was a copper rich deposit, which also was host to about 5 to 6 million ounces of gold. So the whole Trans-Hudson Corridor, going from the home stake deposits of 40-50 million ounces, extends all the way up into the CB Santoy deposits and the Flin Flon ore body, and then hooks over into the very well-known Snow Lake deposits in Manitoba. So, finding a world-class VMS deposit is very much in the potential of Watts Lake.
Great. And what is infrastructure access like at Watts Lake?
Well, infrastructure all throughout Saskatchewan is world class. I mean, Saskatchewan continues to get ranked in the top 5 in the world as mining jurisdictions. So Watts Lake is right in the heart of it. I mean, we're only about 65 kilometers northeast of the town of LaRange and about 20 kilometers northwest of Missinippi. And Missinippi, I mean, there's a provincial highway 102 runs 12 kilometers from the property. There's power, there's water, the infrastructure is very, very favorable, because it's the whole province, especially in northern Saskatchewan, as you head up from Saskatoon, is nothing but mining and large deposits. Flin Flon, which some of your listeners may be encouraged to know, was that I think it was the second largest infrastructure program in the world, next to the Panama Canal, when it was originally discovered. So, not to mention the Athabasca Basin, which is really an offshoot of the Trans-Hudson Corridor. Also potash, copper, zinc. Foran is very active in the area. So the infrastructure is world class.
Great. Now, shifting a bit to the west, you also recently acquired a nickel project in British Columbia. Can you tell us more about the prospects there and what appealed to you about that project?
Sure. Yeah, we're just early days in terms of getting some exploration plans in place. I mean, that whole Nickel Peak area has been explored by other exploration companies. We're pretty new to that area. We brought in a group that had originally staked that. We vended it in for, really low valuation. I mean, obviously our new partners are now shareholders of SKRR. So it's really early days, but it's a pretty well-known district within inside of British Columbia for nickel prospects.
Great. And obviously it's early days, but when might you expect to drill at Nickel Peak?
Well, we don't have any imminent plans. We want to get onto the ground and do some preliminary groundwork. Really, the drilling activity is really going to depend on economics. I mean, we're going to need to raise more capital. We are sitting on over $1 million in cash, but we're being very careful about how we spend that money until the markets kind of improve. One of the things that we are looking for a couple of our nickel projects, our Father Lake nickel project in Saskatchewan, where Rio Tinto is active, and in addition to our Watts Lake, our zinc property. This would be the same for the Nickel Peak group. It's also a world-class jurisdiction, evidenced by the Dakar project by FPX Nickel Corp is just to the south of us. We're really looking for strategic partners and potential JVs. That is kind of a focus of SKRR at this point, and that will really dictate, how soon we can get in and start drilling. But I think it would be early to be going into to start drilling at Nickel Peak this year. So to be determined at this point, given how new the Nickel Peak assets are to the company.
Sure. Looking at jurisdictions, how does working in British Columbia compare to Saskatchewan?
Well, I posed that question to Ross McElroy, our chairman, and also very active globally, not only in Saskatchewan, but and he's got experience all over the world. And his comments are quite simply that both provinces are very well recognized as and established exploration mining jurisdictions. And they do have a long history of successful relationships between the industry, including the local Indigenous communities and the government. So, Saskatchewan in particular is generally recognized as one of the top mining jurisdictions. All of our properties are in mining areas, and that's certainly the case in British Columbia, and it's certainly the case in Saskatchewan. So, I would put them both on par. With maybe certainly a lot more, especially Saskatchewan. But I think both BC and Saskatchewan are both recognized globally as great places for mining.
Great. And do you have agreements and positive relations with First Nations and other local stakeholders?
Well, again, I'm fortunate to be able to lean on the experience of Ross McElroy when it comes to this. Ross has spent an enormous part of his career, and I've always been really impressed on how much time he does spend with the First Nations. There are no formal agreements with First Nations, and none that are required at this time because of the early stage exploration. But SKR maintains a very strong relationship with all of our nearby Indigenous communities. And this is really easy because it just comes second nature for Ross. He's in Saskatchewan on a regular basis with his role as the CEO of Fission Uranium. And this includes everything from Indigenous communities to local Indigenous hunters and trappers. And so all of our drilling, and we've done a lot, 3 drill programs at the Olsen Gold property. And so we're well established and well known, but no formal agreements that are required at this point.
And finally, you also have gold projects in Saskatchewan, where you've completed some drilling last year and earlier this year. What were the results like, and which targets have emerged to have the greatest potential?
Well, we continue to really point at our flagship project, one being the Olsen property. We've had 3 very successful drill campaigns at Olsen since 2019. And in 2021, we also tacked on a very successful drill program at our Manson Bay property, which is a very interesting sort of gold-enriched VMS deposit. Again, a deposit that's already formed, but not 43-101. And drilling on both these properties have encountered significant high-grade mineralization that can be easily, kind of looked at on our website. And both are very deserving of significant follow-up drill programs. But the Saskatchewan Trans-Hudson Corridor, as evidenced by CB Santoy and also by the Homestake deposits, continues to impress not only us, but the whole world in terms of the high-grade nature of the gold in Saskatchewan.
Great. Sherman, thank you very much for joining us today. Excited to see what the company has in store for the remainder of the year.
Well, again, thanks, Tim. Really enjoyed being part of this conference, and I guess we'll see you in Toronto in November.
Sounds great. Next, to talk about Norzinc is CEO and Director Rowan Hazelton. Let's give Rowan a moment to join here. Hello, Rowan. Thank you for joining.
Thank you very much for having me.
Norzinc's Prairie Creek property is home to what is regarded as one of Canada's next large high-grade zinc, lead, and silver mines. Based on its 2021 PEA, the project is expected to have a 20-year mine life with an average annual production of 122 million pounds of zinc. Rowan, welcome.
Thanks, Tim. Great to be here.
Norzinc reported major news on Friday with an agreement to be acquired by the company's largest shareholder. Can you tell us more about the terms of this agreement?
Sure. Thanks, Tim. Yeah, on Friday, we announced we entered into an arrangement agreement with RCF, Resource Capital Funds, our 48% major shareholder, to acquire the rest of the shares outstanding at 3.25 cents per share. This was approved unanimously by the special committee formed by the board as well as by the board as a whole. We explored significant alternatives to this transaction, and we've signed lockup agreements with the directors and officers, and firmly believe that this is the best alternative for shareholders proceeding at this time.
When do you anticipate holding a shareholder vote, and if approved, when would the deal close?
Yeah, the shareholder vote is currently tentatively scheduled for November 30th. It requires a majority vote, 50% plus one, of the shareholders that vote, excluding RCF, as well as a 2/3 majority of all shareholders that vote. Typically, these transactions would close within a week or so following positive shareholder approval, so early December.
Great. Now, looking at operations with the project, you have been conducting some drilling this summer. What is this program focused on?
Sure. The drilling is focused on two areas, geotechnical and metallurgical testing. So the met work is designed at getting additional material, almost 500 kilograms of new material in the first 3 years, and in some cases up to 5 years of planned production, to be sent to SGS laboratories and do a full lock cycle testing, similar to what was done for the feasibility in 2017. This is to be used in our updated feasibility to be produced in the first half of next year. And then on the geotechnical side, it's to do testing in particular on dilution testing and rock stability testing through the use of televiewing and other techniques. There's a third smaller component, which is doing twinning on channel sample data that was taken in the past in order to sort of verify and increase our confidence level in the parts of our resource that are proven by or made up by channel samples as opposed to diamond drilling.
Great. Now, you also recently announced agreements with First Nations groups in the region. What are relations like with the First Nations and other stakeholders?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, we're very pleased to have announced our final agreement with the 80K First Nation, rounding out firm and final agreements with all three of our primary First Nation partners in the area. I can say, because this is coming from the words of chiefs and council in the area, that this is the best relationships of First Nation and community relations that the company has had in its history. So we're very pleased with those partnerships.
Great. Now, the project has a fairly long history with past operators doing a fair amount of work there. What has changed that makes this the time to advance toward production?
Sure, thanks. I think one of the key areas, in particular, in the last number of years, have been advancing the permitting. So by receiving the final mine permits, major permits that we just did, as well as this month we expect to finalize the minor permits to start the road construction. That's been a critical challenge and issue, and then obviously the other one is financing. In these markets being challenging. We've sought a number of different alternatives, certainly since I joined just under a year and a half ago, and in the past, and difficult to finance, a junior mining company at this stage, going forward, now with this proposed transaction, we see a strong path to financing and advancing the project.
Great. Now you mentioned the road construction. The company recently announced that it started staging for road construction. What does this consist of, and how soon until you would begin full-scale work on the road?
Sure, thanks. Yeah, the staging consisted of two parts. So, from the mine side, and then from the south, which is just by the Liard River near Nahanni Butte. From the mine side, we heli lifted in two pieces of new equipment. Excavator and a skid steer, and from the south we also barged over and staged similar equipment. That's to begin by the end of this month, to begin the initial road clearing on both sides, again from the mine and from the south. Then the next stage is following an ice bridge to be built in December, and we would have a third-party contractor come in and do the significant road work. Again, I say significant, although this is still a winter trail. Probably not even equivalent to what would typically be a full winter road. That will come next season. But to do that road work, with following an ice bridge, being able to bring over more major equipment, and then that'll start from the south, and the whole sort of Pioneer Winter Trail, to be completed, by the end of the first quarter. The purpose of the trail is twofold. One, to do the geotechnical work to finalize our designs for an all-season road. So that's geotechnical drilling as well as ground penetrating radar to evaluate the permafrost. And then the second reason is to bring in 6 or 7 new pieces of equipment to be able to get ready to do early works at the mine site surface level starting next year.
Great. And now the other news recently is, I guess lastly, how significant is the recent news that you've received the final mining permits for the project? And do you think this will have a positive impact on the receipt of road permits as well?
Sure, thanks. Yeah, I mean, this was the major permit, so the water license and the land use permit. The component we just received was the ministerial approval on the water license for the expanded mine plan of 2,400 tons per day. And versus 1,600 tons per day, and that's significant. I think it's a strong, show of support from, the regulators, on the impact, positive impact of the project, and obviously that we're doing it responsibly or plan to do it responsibly, given the approvals. The final permits required for starting this road construction work, and frankly for the next stage, the next phase of the road work, I refer to those as sort of minor permits. They consist of a number of things: management plans, license of occupation, and so on. They are related. I think it's, again, a positive statement towards those, and we're very confident we'll get those, this month in the case of this Pioneer, phase 1 road. And then we'll be working hard with the regulators and government to get the required approvals for phase 2 by the fall of next year.
Great. Well, thank you again for joining us today, Ron. We appreciate your time, and we'll see you during the Q&A panel.
Great. Thanks, Tim. Thanks all.
We now welcome our keynote speaker, Dr. Andrew Green, Executive Director of the International Zinc Association, representing the IZA. Thank you so much for joining us to shed light on the industry. The IZA is the only organization dedicated exclusively to the interest of zinc and its users. The mission is to sustainably grow markets and operate R&D initiatives, technology transfer, and communicate the value of zinc. Andrew, take it away.
Thanks, Tim. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with everyone. Zinc's got a great story, and I'm always happy to share that story with the group. So I've just got a couple slides to highlight here. What I wanted to focus on really with the discussion is, I think the other speakers did a great job. I think very exciting discussion about, the zinc that they're going to be producing in the future. And what I'd like to talk about is where that zinc is needed and will be used going in the future. So next slide, please. One slide on self-promotion, but for those of you not aware of the International Zinc Association, what we do, this is a short list of some of those items, but to put it succinctly, we are the global champion and voice for the zinc industry. We do programs that benefit the zinc industry, growing and protecting markets, ensuring license to operate, and communicating all the many benefits and positive stories about zinc as a sustainable material. Next slide. Oh, back one slide. There you go. So what I want to focus on really with just the next couple slides is you hear a lot about low carbon economy. You hear a lot about electrification. And with these discussions, everyone's focusing on copper and lithium and a few others for good reason. Those are certainly critical components that will be needed as we go into this future time. But by the end of this talk, I hope you're going to be agreeing with me that zinc is right up there with those. It plays a critical role in all these different aspects that I'm showing here on this slide, as well as others. So battery storage, tremendous growth that's been predicted and forecast, and we're seeing it right now with our very eyes on a daily basis or weekly basis. And I'll get into that in a little bit more detail in a second. Wind generation, zinc is used to help protect those offshore towers. That's the number one use of zinc is to protect steel from corrosion. And corrosion on a global GDP basis costs the world about 4 to 5% GDP. So if you can protect that steel with zinc, and that's the best way to protect the steels with zinc, you can save a lot of costs, reduce the long-term life cycle costs, and increase sustainability that way. So wind generation is a key area, and the CRU is estimated by 2030 an additional 66,000 tons of zinc will go into that marketplace. Solar panels, there's solar panel farms going up all over the world, US and elsewhere. And again, you need strong structures that are protected, steel structures that are protected with zinc. And CRU is estimating around 160,000 tons of zinc is going to be required by 2030. So we're not talking that far out in the future. A lot of information about infrastructure, and certainly in the U.S. we've got passage of bills that is going to invest a great deal of money into infrastructure, and zinc needs to be right there with steel to protect it for the crash barriers, for the rebar, to ensure that those buildings go up, they stay up, they're sustainable and safe. And then when I talk with people about automotive and electric vehicles, there's a tremendous role that zinc plays there, and I'll talk about that on the next slide. So zinc and automotive, the automotive market represents about 700,000 tons of zinc use in those auto bodies directly, but really it's over 1 million tons of zinc that's going into that automotive sector each year. And this is an exciting area for zinc, because not only is it a large market right now, but it's growing. You can see here we're estimating about 22% growth by 2030, and that's mainly coming from the fact, if you look at some of the emerging markets like India and China as shown here, the global average for use of zinc in protecting steel in automotive is around 95%. In China, you only have about 50% of the cars that are protected with zinc, and in India, only about 20%. And when you recognize that India and China have the fastest growing middle classes, and the forecasts in the economy of those two countries alone, when we look at the increased penetration, getting that zinc up from 20% and 50% closer to 90%, even if we got to 75%, we're talking hundreds of thousands of additional zinc that's going to be required for that. And then on the EV side of things, a lot of people think that that's a marketplace that zinc might be losing out on, and that's far from reality. If you look at Tesla 3, they switched from aluminum body to the high strength steel that's protected with zinc. These other manufacturers pretty much every car that's putting out, every automotive manufacturer is putting on EV is now using galvanized or zinc protected high strength steel. And that's because you're adding such tremendous mass of the battery to increase the distance that they can go, that you need to have that extra strength in the body itself to prevent and ensure safety in the case of a crash, what have you. So you really need the galvanized high strength steel in those car bodies going forward to protect it, give it the strength it needs. And it's getting lighter and lighter as work on alloys goes forward. So it's a very positive story for us to look at in the EV market as well. Next slide, please. And one other market area that I really want to touch on, just tremendous growth opportunity, is the zinc and energy storage market. We've looked at zinc chemistry for automotive, and honestly, it's not that great of a fit for a number of different reasons. But if you look at energy storage, where there's been just tremendous forecasts of growth by Bloomberg and others, and we're seeing it, I think on a weekly basis, a monthly basis, with the increased requirements. We just had the Hurricane Ian come through, and those are a few very clear examples of where you want to have that energy storage, but just to safeguard the electrification as we switch to less and lower carbon emissions, going to things like solar power and wind power and so forth. You have to have a secure, steady, and reliable energy storage for that energy to go into and store it and release it over long periods of time when it's needed. And zinc chemistry fits that beautifully. It's got the long duration storage that you need. It's safe. I'm not going to mention names here, but I can say without hesitation that you don't have to worry about fire hazards with zinc batteries, what have you. It is a secure supply chain. So some of the other minerals that are being looked at in the energy storage market will have some supply chain issues that are critical. And then, of course, it's sustainable. It can be recycled at end of life, reused. And the market predictions here that are shown are very exciting. So by the year 2030, we're looking at increased use of zinc by 150,000 tons. By 2040, almost 1 million tons. And you go out to 2050, you're talking 2.8 million tons additional zinc being used in that marketplace. So all the zinc that the previous speakers were talking about will very much be needed to go into these markets. Next slide, please. And this is just my summary slide, but I'm not going to read these to you. You can read those as you want. But the main point here is when you look at what's happening with society going towards electrification, towards low carbon economies and so forth, zinc is absolutely essential and will play a key role in those, whether it's the automotive sector, the energy renewable sector, the energy storage sector. We have a key role to play, and the demand is going to increase significantly as we go forward. And that's all I have. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us to shed light on the industry.
My pleasure.
Sure. One quick question, I guess, that I would have in mind is about, obviously the battery space is a hot topic, and with zinc air batteries, how do you see the growth potential there, and what projects are you familiar with that where people are utilizing them?
Sure. But the nice thing for zinc batteries as a whole is there's a number of different chemistries that are already at the stage of sales and so forth. So you've got zinc air, you've got zinc nickel and zinc bromine, flow batteries and so forth. All of those have their strengths, so different applications and so forth. And really with the zinc air, as well as a number of those others, the energy storage looking to support the energy grid systems for housing. For example, I have solar panels on my house. I'm head of the Zinc Association, so I'm not going to get a lithium battery pack on my house. I'm waiting and looking forward to adding a zinc battery pack to my house to provide that energy storage. And zinc air provides a great solution to that.
Great. And now for our final segment, where we'll welcome back all of our guests for a Q&A segment. For our live audience, thank you for submitting your questions throughout the event. And let's get started here. So looking at the zinc side, how do you as explorers and developers view the zinc market? Maybe Mike, go ahead and get us.
Well, I don't like to put myself in the position of predicting markets because it's not my sphere, if you like. But I was very buoyed by what the previous speaker was saying about the the projections there. I mean, the World Bank, I know they put out a more pessimistic forecast for zinc prices, next year and beyond. The IMF put out actually a slightly more positive projection for zinc next year, or this year and next. So it's very encouraging to hear what he was saying about the potentials in automotive and batteries, etc. So look, I think zinc's got a strong future. The past speaker can speak more knowledgeably about that, but we're feeling very optimistic about our operations and our ability to produce zinc. So, and we've got 10 to 20 year mine lives ahead of us, and so I think zinc, base metals generally, zinc specifically, and copper have both got strong futures. So.
Great.
Tim, if I may add my views. I mean, I think zinc's caught between the strong positive supply on the one hand, and then demand with concerns about a world global recession on the other. And I think obviously on the supply side, given several smelters on care and maintenance, that's a statement of I think strong statement for positive prices. On the other hand, the global recession concerns. And I think in general, if you look at zinc in the past 6, 12, even 18 months, it's performed better than I think almost most metals. If you look at the very recent 30 days, I guess that's not the case. But what I've been saying for most of this year was until this recent correction, it'd been outperforming copper and all the other metals, and I think that's a strong statement of what those fundamentals are below. I know a lot of the smelters are basing their forecasts on $3,500 per ton, or about $1.35 per pound, which is approximately spot today. So I think there's some strong floor support at around these prices, which are positive prices for all of us on the call.
Great. Now, some of you are exploration. We have companies at different stages here, from exploration through development and production, but some of you are in production or development stage, perhaps sell or plan to sell zinc concentrates. And kind of playing on this, have you seen any changes in the downstream market for zinc concentrates, perhaps given the impact of shutdowns at European zinc smelters?
I'd like to go back to the easier question about the zinc market.
Go ahead, Sherman. Actually, we can circle back to that. Absolutely. Go ahead.
I think, Robert Friedland kind of summarized it best, is we've got kind of the revenge of the old economy. And, I was on a really good Zoom call yesterday with Hugh Jackman, the CEO of Northern Graphite. And there's just no question that, those of us that are in the zinc business or have zinc exploration properties, we're in the middle of this revolution. So I think we're only going to see, much higher prices for all these commodities in this EV revolution that we're in the middle of. And I think it's important to note that, as explorers, whether it's gold, zinc, whatever the assets are, we're in a position where the capital markets aren't being overly friendly. So I would certainly ask, Rohan to give our phone number to RCF. Because I think we're at a point where the majors do need to participate in the downstream and in not helping, because we're here for business, and we're here to do well running our exploration companies. But boy, the market kind of closed the door on the capital side, And that's just not going to be sustainable for us to bring about these world-class deposits. We are going to need support from the market. We're going to need support from strategic investors, and I think there's just a matter of time before they come knocking for quality deposits like we all have.
Great.
If I can just respond quickly to Sherman. First of all, I agree with your statements, although I would say we're still at the beginning of that revolution instead of the middle. I think there's a long way to go. And just quickly on concentrates, although I know Mike is in production, so he probably has a better sense, but we do follow the concentrate market. We do have one MOU with Boliden, and in discussions with many others. The short-term impact, as you mentioned, it is tightening the market, and some concerns about placing material, certainly for some producers. And I think what an interesting statistic that I've been told that exemplifies that market is a spot premium. Typically, at times, has been $100 per ton, is now at $400 per ton. In spot metal premium in Europe. So I think that's an indication of how tight that market is.
Great.
All I can add from our side is, we're fortunate to have a very strong relationship with Trafigura, and the offtakes we have with Trafi sort of cushion us from that any impacts in that at the downstream. So that's a big factor for us, and we place all of our comms through Trafi. So I think that that's an important sort of buffer to those sort of other downstream market forces that we don't really see the impact of.
Great. And shifting more to kind of a general question on, we spoke with some of you about community relations. Another factor that impacts the mining industry is governments. How do you find operating in your respective jurisdictions? Have you seen any changes with winds of change in politics? Maybe we'll start with the gentleman from Bendito.
Yeah, so thanks, Tim. So we do not see any reason to have too much concern. And we're obviously in Mexico, and so there is a bit of a history. But we do not, it's all a function of how, and for our zinc project, fortunately, it is fully permitted. So we do not have, I think it's just a matter of updating quite a few other permits and getting things into production. There's been some prior initial production. So with respect to dealing with the governments, to be honest with you, we just closed our deal in July. We have not done any direct interaction with government officials, but I'm expecting that those relationships would be okay. So it's never smooth, but we'll have to find our way to sort those things out. Yes.
Great.
Maybe I can just add because obviously we're also operating the two projects in Mexico, and the focus is really on local relationships. We put a great deal of effort into that. We make sure we employ people at the sites who, indeed, general managers at the site, people who lead those operations, who have good local relationships and know how to maintain them. So that's pivotal for us, and we've got some very good quality people at both those operations whose primary task is to do just that. Interactions with government, well, the COVID pandemic caused an impact, as it did everywhere, and some of the government agencies in Mexico are backed up, backlogs of applications and what have you. So things are a bit more slow, going through the pipeline as they, that compared to the past. But you just have to work with the authorities, and it's going okay for us. So there are, you do experience some delays on permit renewals and things, but they do get there. But the focus on local relationships, that's pivotal for us, and putting the right people into those roles. You need local people who understand the local situation. You need to understand the cultural elements and the local community requirements, and you need local people who can do that with you. So.
Yeah. And Tim, just to add a little one, just last more thing to that, because that's one of the things we identified coming into, call it new country, as Bendito. And so working with locals has been so important to us. And so we have kept the team that we acquired, the property that we're running these projects, and then have also had meetings with certain property owners and are doing certain services for certain ranches. So it's the relationship you build locally, and we have essentially continued with what Azure had started prior. So it's benefiting us somehow.
Great.
You know, I would add just on this on the government side, you know, we continue to be very impressed with the the quality and approach of in particular Saskatchewan, because we know it well. You know, they're very, very mining friendly. You know, they got various supports, $50,000 for drill programs. I was again on that call yesterday. Hugh Jackman was talking about he called it an IRA. Again, a government initiative to really promote graphite production in North America. You know, we're even seeing it in our flow through. I mean, we did some flow through recently in BC, call it super flow, so we'll call it whatever you want. After all the credits were laid down, like I don't want to don't quote me on the math, but the net after tax cost of the investment was ridiculously low. So I think the governments are stepping up, and they realize that this energy transition, meeting these zero targets, is not going to be easy. So I think they're a bit ahead of the curve from what I can see from our point of view in promoting mining and realizing that in order to maintain a wonderful society that's somewhat pollution free. And I was in Kathmandu in March. I'll tell you, they got some work to do.
Great. All right. That's a wrap for today's live Zinc event. Thank you to all our presenting companies, and a special thank you to the International Zinc Association, specifically our keynote speaker, Dr. Andrew Green, for presenting to us today. Don't forget, Red Cloud has plenty of more content to watch. Check out redcloudfs.com for more videos, event listings, and other mining-related content. For those joining us live on the streams, video replays from today's feeds will be available shortly. Remember to like and subscribe for more exclusive content. See you next time.